I'm all signed out after that film. Just going to power up my laptop and hope that it all works. You can all hear me, can't you?
Yeah.
Is that on? Yes. Okay, so a little bit about myself. I'm a Screen.Dance director, programmer and educator. And judging from this photo, I began my practice as a Bharatanatyam dancer. And I thought I'd put this photograph up so you had a bit of an idea of what the dance looks like. I wasn't very good at the dance. I was very good at the practical side of it, but not very good at the expression side. But my screen dance kind of ideas, and I ventured into it from the many years of dancing at Hindu festivals. There was at least 10 to 20 a year. I was always brought out as the girl that knows a little bit of Bharatanatyam dance. And they were always filmed, and often when they were filmed, they would just be keepsake, and it was usually a shaky camera, really bad lighting, really bad set design. And the more I watched these over the years that I was dancing, the more I started to see that a lot was being really lost in, the essence was really being lost in translation. So I started to pick up the camera myself and wanted to start to film dance as well. So Indian classical dance was a real focus of mine at the time. And many years later, a few years later, I actually made a drama about my story as a dancer, and I cast this very beautiful lady, and she played me in the film, and that was funded by Creative England and BFI, and I made sure that I cast the most beautiful girl I could find, because she cast me. So that film was more drama, so I'm also a drama filmmaker. But going back to Bharatanatyam dance, the thing that I really was starting to focus on was, I'm just going to play a little bit of this whilst I'm talking, was really looking at deconstructing movement to its most simplest form. So when I was a dancer, the costumes that you wear, the bells that you hear, the vibrations of the bells, I started to then work with 16mm film. I was really interested in the colour and the fine detail of how dance and film could come together. And 16mm was a fantastic medium for me to work with, because it made me just work in that tiny little frame. So I was drawing on it, scratching on it, cutting it together by hand, and then I filmed the projection and made the short film. This took me a year to make. I was locked in a projection room for a good part of a year just to make this 3-minute film. I'm just going to play the music a little bit if it works. Oh, no, it's not working. Okay, let me pause it a second. Oh, excuse your ears. Let's try again. If in doubt, plug and unplug it. Let's play a little bit of this. This is all hand edited, hand drawn, hand spliced, and was made in 1997. Right, just going to pause it there. I didn't want to stop it halfway through. But yes, attention to detail, how movement appeared in the frame and how you represent the movement in the frame started to become a massive focus of mine. And a year after that, I then started to look at how I could work with objects and landscapes and people. And armed with a camera and a bicycle, I cycled across 8 countries. I cycled about, well, it was about 8 kilometres, but I like to say 8 miles, 8,000 miles, sorry. And wanted to just kind of discover how I could move with the camera, but also how the frame could be filled with landscapes and people. And I made this installation, this again was spanned over about 3 or 4 years, and I had many kind of installation commissions, and I just want to play you a slight little clip. Create a portrait of each film, each country, just with a bicycle and a camera, and just see where I moved through space and how I could capture it. It's very similar to the last film that you just saw. So for me, always moving or finding a way of moving with the camera was something that really inspired me. And that kind of led me on to quite an unusual collaboration, which has been taking place for the past 8 years. And this is where I came into contact with a group called Freefall Dance Company. I'm just going to pause it there. Freefall Dance Company are comprised of 12 dancers who have severe learning disabilities. And I was asked to make a dance film for them for the Olympics 2012. And I guess, you know, they wanted to see how I would interpret how they move. And Freefall have varying levels of autism, learning disabled, and again, I was kind of really looking at how we could look at the fine detail of each person and how they moved. So out of the 12, I'd say four of the group had Down syndrome. And one thing that I did not know is that if a young person has Down syndrome, their limbs and their bodies are very nimble and very supple. So they're able to do ballet movements that ballet dancers would train a good 10 years to do. They're born with that ability. And so from observing Freefall for about best half of a year, best part of a year, I started to understand how each person moves individually and how they process information and instructions. And so this kind of kicked off an 8-year collaboration. And over that time, we grew in strength in terms of how we communicated with each other. And we stuck with the same team as well. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of an example of how they move. So yeah, I don't know if I said that they're all ballet dancers. Dance is their life. They rehearse once a week. They have one performance a year. And this particular film was shown as part of the Olympics and gained 1.2 million viewers. And one of the main things for us was, wow, dance film works with disabilities. We need to expose and represent disability on screen, and it should be up there amongst all the other dancers that are making work. It should be on an equal platform. So that became one of our real main objectives. So I'm just going to show you a little here. This is Barry and Paul dancing. And the sound is up. Oh no, there's no sound on this, I remember. So you can see that they're all ballet dancers, and Nikki here in particular has a very, very amazing movement aesthetic in the sense that any instruction you give to Nikki, he does it backwards, which is an incredible thing, incredible movement to work with. So as they all work individually, you know, to get them all together as one group and dancing is one of the hardest tasks, because they all have their own trajectory, their own visual aesthetic. So just getting us all in the room to make a film and getting all the dancers all together and negotiate each other's characters and personalities was a feat in itself. But we were so pleased that this got the traction that it did, because then we were able to make the other 2 films. And I'm just going to shift over because there's no sound on this, so that's a real shame. And so yes, let's turn the sound of this. Then we made the second film, which is called One Fine Day. Now, the first one was really about highlighting who Freefall were. The second film now became more inclusive. We wanted to use the ideas and the dance aesthetic of Freefall to create their story, ultimately to have their voice in the film. I'm just going to fast forward. Is there any sound? As I'm talking. So yeah, Freefall work in a very improvised way. Everything they do is improvised, every shoot day is improvised, and we basically work around Freefall, which is really amazing because it makes them have the central stage. They have the agency of the frame and they have the agency of the whole shoot. So it's such a great medium that it gives anybody with disabilities a chance to express themselves, and they're not controlled in any way. So let me just fast forward. In the life of Freefall, and they chose the locations of the places that they often visit, which was the pub, the train station, and also the park. So each day, we had 2 days to shoot this. They improvised everything. Everything you see here is improvised. We just had a steady cam, some lighting, and just hoped for the best in terms of what we could put together in terms of a story. But they were so used to working with us, and we were so used to working with them. We really built a creative partnership that we were able to allow that process to happen. And as you can see, they absolutely love being in front of camera. Interestingly, they don't like watching it back so much. But yeah, so this second film was really, we felt we'd really kind of crossed boundaries in terms of how does inclusion look like and what does it look like. I've got 5 minutes. Okay. So I've got to fast forward now. So it then brings us to the final film of the trilogy, which is called We Are Here. And this is where Birmingham Royal Ballet, because Freefall Association of Birmingham Royal Ballet, we decided that let's keep that inclusion and collaboration going. So we invited 2 of their principal dancers to come and work with us and come and work with Freefall, which I have to say, for the principal ballet dancers, they found this absolutely unusual. You know, they found it a really hard collaboration, but Freefall were absolutely fine. They were well versed in what Screen.Dance is, and they were well versed in working with the cameras. So it was a really unique collaboration. So you see Barry Lexton in. I've only got 5 minutes left, so I'm just going to show you skip on and again, this is improvised when we got to the venue, so to the location. Films you can watch online, but I guess I'm just going to go straight to the project that I'm working on now. So Freefall, and this is the wonderful Nikki, who does everything, all of the instructions backwards. Freefall have taught me so much about working with disabilities. It's taught me about working in an inclusive way. It's taught me about the limitations as well and how to work within the limitations of a film shoot. You only have 4 hours a day from which is separated into sequences throughout the day. You only have really 2 takes per shot, no more than that. You're not going to get any more performance out of the dancers. So there's real, it's taught me such a lot, and so it's bringing me to my very final film, which is the reason why I'm here today, because I really want to ask you all lots of opinions about how to make this final film. So the final film that I'm making, I'm just going to play this, it has no sound, so you get a chance to see some images. I sent these images this morning. I'm going to be working with 2 dancers that are visually impaired and also have very complex disabilities. This is the space that we'll be filming it in. The theme is connection, and we're looking to see, you know, how do we do lighting design for this. It's going to be a short screen dance film, and the whole idea is that these dancers here, they're movers, and over the past year, they've got to the point now where they feel that they can move in a space and connect with other dancers. And this is the film that I'm making at the moment. The soundtrack that we're making for this is both deaf and blind. She's already given us a soundtrack. She's gone into the space, she's felt it, she's given us a soundscape for it. So we have the soundscape, we have the dancers, we have the venue, but we are absolutely a fish out of water in terms of how do we make this film. The other layers to this as well, yes, I can make this film and we can watch it, but the other layers I've been asked to do is, can you make this film for someone who's visually impaired? Also, can you make this film for someone who has no hearing but has sight? And finally, we want you to make a film that's for both deaf and blind audiences. So I have a huge task in my hands to fulfill all those 4 objectives. And we're kind of in the planning stages of that. So I'm just going to leave it at that.